Eers and Beers, episode 40. What's on tap? We've got to react to what just happened down in Waco. I'm speechless in a way. But first, as always, I'm Wesley Uhler. What are we drinking? I've just got a classic Miller Lite tonight, folks. Nothing fancy. Salute. It's literally the moments after WVU just lost an absolute heartbreaker, 81-77 down in Waco against the Baylor Bears, a game that they led for a large margin of, and a game that if this team really is on the outside looking in come March Madness, that we're going to look back to in hindsight and ask a lot of what-if questions. The biggest one of those being, obviously, what happens if Taz Sherman doesn't get punched in the jaw and likely concussed in a tie game that had almost 4 minutes left in it? That's the big takeaway here. That's the big controversy, talking point, whatever you want to call it, as the Mountaineers drop now their sixth straight game. And I have a feeling people are still going to do the whole, this is classic West Virginia, we always do this, heartbreak, I've seen this fish before, we've lost so many games like this season, but I don't think you can do that tonight. I really don't. Like, you can't account for your best player having his best game of the season, maybe the best game of his career, get punched in the jaw in the final minutes of a tie game, no call, no review. You just can't account for that. You can't judge that in the typical scope of, oh, well, they led most of the game and they lost. I mean, they made 9 of their last 10 shots down the stretch. So they still played pretty well considering. But Taz Sherman had what? Let me double check here. 29, right? Yeah, 29 points. When Conor McGregor or Mike Tyson or, insert famous fighter here, caught him across the chin, caught him across the jaw. It's devastating. It's tough. Like, I'm really gutted right now. This feels like more than a regular season loss because it was the 6th straight loss in what feels like a season that's slipping away. You felt like last time at the Coliseum against Baylor, you had a really good chance to get them in that game and you let that one slip. Well, now you feel like you just did it against the Bears again. And there were, man, they did so many things well. I have bitched and moaned and complained about team assists on this podcast all season. They're in single digits in that category way too often. They've been in single digits in 3 of their last 4 games. They had 16 team assists today. They had 9 in the first half. 10 in the first half. That's more than they've had in a lot of games recently. You finished with 16. That's great. They shot fantastically from the field, over 50%. But you regressed at the free throw line. You only shot 61% at the free throw line. And what we've talked about with this team before, how they need to create more opportunities, more possessions. They need to take more shots than their opponents. And that's something that they have done well even throughout this losing streak. Well, not so much tonight. WVU took 48 shots to Baylor's 62. And a big part of that was rebounds for the Baylor Bears. They crushed you there, 36-26, including 17 offensive rebounds for Baylor. But it's hard to get into that all that minutia right now with how the game ended in the scope of Taz Sherman. Tie game with 3 minutes and 42 seconds left, and your best player, having his best game of his career, gets punched in the jaw. And there's no call. I don't even understand how do they not review that at least? They went to commercial break right afterwards. How do you not go take a look at that, John Higgins? You son of a... Part of me thinks that might be, that it was. Part of me, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking that was the best game that we've played in a long time. You also let Baylor have 17 offensive rebounds, and you turn the ball over 15 times. It's a tough one. The first Baylor game was rough. In hindsight, that's one you want back. In this one, whole lot of what if, and that's one of the worst places to be as a fan. Like I had these notes like here. If this team loses, here's what I wrote with about 6 minutes left in the back and forth in the second half. I wrote in my notes right here. I'm looking at it. This team, if they lose this game, will prove that they continue to come up small in big moments. But again, I don't think you can do that tonight. You can't do the we've seen this movie before. We've seen this fish before. This is classic West Virginia. This is classic this team. Because you can't account for Taz Sherman having the night that he had. Again, arguably the best game of his WVU career up until the point that he got punched in the math. Like, nothing makes me question the existence of a higher power quite like the continued success of Baylor athletics. Like, how? You know how many scumbags have been employed by that university in that athletic department, and their football team still winning Big 12 titles? Their basketball team just won a national championship. They're a Methodist school, aren't they? God, Jesus, you got to smite them. So now you try and end this losing streak Saturday at home afternoon against Texas Tech. I guess the good news of that is that Texas Tech has a real massive emotional game tomorrow night against Texas, Tuesday night, depending on where you're listening to this. When you're listening to this, Tuesday night, Texas Tech hosts Texas. And of course, that means Chris Beard, the former coach of the Red Raiders, who took them to the overtime of the national championship game and then left this offseason for Texas. Chris Beard's back in town. Texas is in town. That's a big one for them tomorrow night, late tomorrow night. That's the late game tomorrow night. So that's going to be an emotionally charged one. That's going to be a huge game for Texas Tech. And then they've got to kind of reset those batteries and fly to Morgantown on Friday. That's the good news. As my co-host here on the podcast, our buddy Adam Crowley, he texted me and he said it well. He said, I don't mind at least that we're getting Texas Tech after what should be a blood feud with Texas. Here's the hoping. I mean, let's hope that one goes 5, 6, 7 overtimes. You two knock each other out. So that's all I got as it relates to tonight. I don't believe what I just saw. But I actually do, because at least in the overarching theme of heartbreaking WVU defeats, yeah, this one fits in very nicely. Real quick before I go, while I'm bitching and moaning here, I might as well do some bitching and moaning about the football schedule stuff that we just found out today. If you missed this, WVU will open the season against Pitt at Heinz Field. We all knew that, but the news is that the game now is on Thursday, September 1st, instead of Saturday to September 3rd. That's kind of annoying. The national spotlight is cool. The fact that it's a primetime game is cool, but I would just rather have it be Saturday at 3:30 when Mountaineer Nation can invade the North Shore of Pittsburgh and take that place over. But I thought, okay, not such a big deal. And then I saw the Virginia Tech game is on a Thursday as well. September 22nd, I believe, is the date. So if you include the home game that we play against Baylor on a Thursday night, WVU football plays 3 Thursday night games this year. 25% of our games are on Thursday nights. 3 of our first 6 games are on Thursday nights. Listen, I want to be clear here. This is a very first world problem. All right, I realize that. Don't get me wrong. I'm very self-aware that this is I'm bitching about what day of the week that WVU's football game's on. Very first world problem. But it's still annoying. Like, the WVU fans have been jonesing, just absolutely begging and dying to get these regional rivalries going again for years. Ever since we joined the Big 12 a decade ago. Like, finally some road trips that, are in the same time zone, that aren't 700, 800, 1,000 miles away. some regional rivals that WVU fans can actually road trip to the games, unlike any of our Big 12 opponents. And you were so looking forward to a weekend in Pittsburgh, a weekend in Blacksburg, and now all of a sudden those games are on a Thursday night, on a school night, which, depending on what your work style is and your time off and things like that, depending on what your family situation is and your kid's going to be in school, things like that, it's a real kick in the knackers for a fan base that deserved the opportunity to invade Pittsburgh and to invade Blacksburg. And don't get me wrong, I'm still for sure going to be at the Pitt game. It's 25 minutes down the road from my house is Heinz Field. But I wanted to go to Blacksburg too, but I'm not going to be able to swing that now on a Thursday. I'm just not going to be able to take the time off work. I work for iHeartRadio. A huge part of my job is the Steelers. That's going to be during Steelers season. I'm not going to be able to take 2 days off in the middle of Steelers season. I'm just not going to be able to do it. But I've been planning on going to Blacksburg. I was going to. I'm sure there's plenty of you in the fan base as well, too, that were planning on making one of those trips, maybe both of those trips. And now, since they're on, again, school nights, and you've got a job and you've got families, you won't be able to swing it. It's just annoying. Again, very first world problem. It's cool to be in prime time on Thursday night when the whole nation's watching. Well, hopefully we don't, embarrass ourselves. But I tell you what, the ACC better make this up to us on the back end. That's all I got to say. It just sucks. That's how you know I'm old. That's how you know I'm in my 30s now. If this was 2009 and I was still in college at WVU and we were playing 3 times on a Thursday night, I'd love it. But now I got a job and I got a kid and I got to be up in the morning. All right, one more swig of this Miller Lite here. This was like the airing of grievances episode. Getting it all out about Taz getting punched in the jaw, and letting it all out about Pitt and Virginia Tech being Thursday games and having to play 3 Thursday night games this year. Such is life. What are you going to do? Again, very first world problems. But that's also why I got a microphone. Sometimes I want to complain. You got to get Texas Tech on Saturday. Again, you hope that that's a bloodbath tomorrow night, Tuesday night, depending on when you're listening to this. Come on, Longhorns. 3, 4, 5 overtimes. Oh, I'm burping here. Excuse me. But you got to get Texas Tech at home this weekend and stop the bleeding. Or all of a sudden, you're maybe past being up creek without a paddle. You might be falling off the waterfalls or chasing waterfalls. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Just beat the Red Raiders at home on Saturday. I'll talk to you guys after then. Crowley and I will have another podcast. That's how I think we're going to keep doing this, because he works a crazy schedule, as we've kind of explained on the podcast before. I think Crowley and I are going to do a podcast every weekend, and then throughout the week, I'll do these little instant reaction pods post-game. So that's what we'll do for now. That's the game plan. And also, your starting quarterback in the Backyard Brawl, now on a Thursday night, September 1st, at Heinz Field against the Pitt Panthers, Will Goose Crowder. I'm whooshing. You're whooshing. It's late on Monday night. We just lost a heartbreaker to Baylor. I'll talk to you Saturday. Please win. Let's go Mountaineers. Let's go drink some beers.